Take the economy seat, or I mark you non-compliant. Document exactly what happened. Now verify who changed my seat.
The woman was already fastening her seatbelt when Marcus Reed stopped beside 2A. I'm not trying to. The woman in 2A finally produced her phone. I have my confirmation right here. Marcus caught only a glimpse before she angled the screen toward Elise, but it was enough. The seat reassignment timestamp was 7 minutes after Marcus had boarded. That should have been impossible. Elise saw it too. Her thumb stopped over the tablet. Marcus felt something colder than embarrassment settle into place. This was no longer about a seat. Please call the lead agent, he said. Elise drew herself straighter. If you continue delaying boarding, I'll have to document you as non-compliant. Marcus studied her for a moment, then stepped completely out of the aisle. Document exactly what happened. Elise tapped the screen. A few seconds later, Marcus's phone vibrated inside his pocket. Not a call. An automated operational alert tied to his executive account. Bowen's cabin Reese detect. He did not take the phone out yet. At the front of the aircraft, the lead agent started walking toward him, and Marcus understood that somebody had just turned a stolen first-class seat into an official record. The lead agent's name was Daniel Price. Marcus knew that before the man introduced himself because the same name appeared every month in North Star Meridian station performance reports. Daniel looked first at Elise, then at the woman in 2A, and only after that at Marcus. Elise says there's a seating dispute. There's an unauthorized override on my reservation, Marcus said. I'd like you to verify who made it. Daniel's eyes flicked to the boarding pass in Marcus's hand. We can review anything irregular after departure. Right now, I need everyone seated. Marcus glanced at the open aircraft door. The jet bridge was still connected. No one was trapped by time except the people choosing to act as though they were. Then check the override before you close the door. Daniel's expression remained professionally pleasant. Sir, I'm trying to get you where you need to go. I'm already where I need to go. My assigned seat is occupied. Behind Marcus, passengers began rearranging themselves around the delay. The young man headed for 3C moved against the bulkhead to clear the aisle. A woman across from 2A lowered her magazine without pretending to read it anymore. Daniel took Elise's tablet and opened the reservation screen. He watched him scroll past the seat history. Too fast. Your reservation has a service note, Daniel said. What kind? It indicates a cabin adjustment was authorized. Whom? Daniel hesitated. Station control. Marcus knew the answer was wrong before Daniel finished saying it. Station control could approve operational reseating during an equipment change, but the approval required a reason code. The code would appear beside the agent identifier. What's the reason code? Daniel looked at him more carefully now. Most passengers would not know to ask. Elise folded her arms. Sir, we've already offered you another seat. Marcus turned toward her. You offered me economy after someone reassigned a first-class seat without asking me. The woman in 2A shifted slightly. Her confidence had begun to thin. I didn't take anything from him, she said. The gate supervisor told me the seat was available. Marcus nodded. I believe you. That surprised her. It surprised Elise more. Marcus had no interest in turning another passenger into the villain because an employee had made a decision upstream. The timestamp on her phone made that much clear. Daniel stepped closer and lowered his voice. Mr. Reed, if you continue challenging crew instructions during boarding, we may have to treat this as a conduct issue. There it was. A seat assignment problem had become a behavior problem because Marcus refused to accept the wrong answer. The young man near 3C spoke again. He hasn't done anything. Daniel turned. Please stay out of this. I've been standing here the whole time. Marcus looked at the young man. What's your name? Avon Brooks. Avon, don't argue with them. Just remember what you saw. Elise's gaze sharpened. Are you encouraging passengers to document crew conduct? I'm asking him to remember. Daniel's tablet gave a soft notification tone. His eyes dropped to the screen. Marcus saw the change before Daniel could hide it. What does it say? Ape. Daniel did not answer. Marcus finally removed his phone. The executive alert had expanded automatically. The unauthorized override had triggered because his reservation carried a governance-protected profile used during unannounced operational audits. Only a narrow group inside North Star Meridian knew those profiles existed. Marcus had created the program after 3 discrimination complaints in another hub had been dismissed as isolated misunderstandings. He had not expected to become one of the test cases. Daniel handed the tablet back to Elise. "We're removing Mr. Reed from the flight until this can be reviewed." He stared at him. "Removing him?" Daniel's voice dropped. "He's delaying boarding." Marcus felt the mistake become heavier. "Before you do that," he said, "preserve the seat change log." Daniel's head came up. "That isn't your concern. It became my concern when you changed the record. I didn't change anything." Marcus looked at the tablet. "I didn't say you did." For the first time, Daniel stopped performing confidence. He turned toward the jet bridge and spoke into his radio. "Hold boarding at the door." Evan pulled out his phone, not to film, but to type. Marcus watched Daniel carefully. Someone had reassigned the seat. Someone had added the note. Now Daniel was building a second record around Marcus's refusal to accept it. And somewhere inside North Star Meridian's system, both versions were being preserved. Marcus watched Daniel keep one hand on the radio while the other hovered near the tablet. "Mr. Reed will deplane voluntarily," Daniel said into the microphone, as if the decision had already been made. "Passenger conduct review pending." Marcus heard the phrasing and understood exactly what Daniel was doing. Once those words entered the station log, the seat dispute would become secondary. Anyone reviewing the incident later would begin with an allegedly disruptive passenger and work backward. "I haven't agreed to deplane," Marcus said. Daniel covered the radio. "You've been instructed." "By the captain?" "By station management. That's not what I ask." Elise shifted beside him. Her earlier certainty had faded, though she still kept the tablet close to her body. The woman in 2A had removed her seatbelt now. She looked from Marcus to Daniel, increasingly uncomfortable. "Maybe I should just go back to my original seat," she said. Daniel answered without turning. "Please remain where you are." Marcus noticed that. A simple mistake could still have ended with the woman returning to her assigned seat. Daniel no longer wanted that solution. Evan noticed too. He stopped typing and slipped his phone into his pocket. A second gate employee appeared at the aircraft door with an airport security officer. The officer was a broad-shouldered black woman in her 40s whose badge read Holland. She did not immediately approach Marcus. Instead, she looked around the cabin. "What's the removal basis?" she asked. Daniel answered quickly. "Failure to comply with boarding instructions and escalating behavior." Officer Holland looked at Marcus. "You asked to sit somewhere?" "Yes, in economy." "Were you assigned there?" "No." She turned to Daniel. "Was he yelling?" "No, but that's not required." "Threats?" "No." "Blocking anyone physically?" Daniel glanced at the passengers behind Marcus. "He delayed boarding." Marcus almost smiled. Not because anything was funny, but because Daniel had finally been forced to describe the conduct instead of labeling it. Officer Holland looked toward Elise. "What started this?" "A seat issue." "What seat?" Elise hesitated. 2A. The woman occupying it raised her hand slightly. "I was moved there at the gate. He didn't do anything to me." Daniel's face tightened. Marcus took his phone out again. He had resisted opening the executive controls because he did not want his title to become a shortcut around the facts. Now he selected the preservation function attached to the audit profile. He did not call anyone. He submitted a system request. Of reservation history, cabin overeaties, station notes, and sure access logs. A confirmation appeared. Preservation initiated. Daniel's tablet chimed a moment later. He looked down. "What did you do?" he asked. Marcus met his eyes, protected the record. Daniel stared at him differently now. Not as though he recognized Marcus, but as though he had recognized the system command. Only senior compliance staff, certain auditors, and a small number of executives could initiate one. Officer Holland noticed the reaction. "Is there something I need to know?" Daniel recovered quickly. "No." Marcus made a mistake then. He let frustration get ahead of judgment. "There is," he said. "He knows exactly what that preservation notice means." Daniel seized on it immediately. "See, he has internal access and is interfering with an active operational process." Marcus regretted the sentence as soon as it left him. He had handed Daniel a surface-level explanation that could sound plausible to anyone without context. And Officer Holland looked between them. "You work for the airline?" Marcus paused. This was the moment he could reveal everything and end at least part of the argument. Instead, he said, "Yes." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Then this is an employee matter too." Marcus realized the trap had widened. If Daniel could frame him as an employee using privileged access to pressure frontline staff, the investigation would become more complicated. even if Daniel was ultimately wrong. Marcus looked at Officer Holland. "I'll step off the aircraft voluntarily," he said. "But I want the record to show that I am not agreeing the removal is justified." Daniel reached immediately for his radio. Officer Holland raised one hand. "I'll write what I observed myself." That was the first thing all morning Daniel had not controlled. Marcus picked up his backpack and walked toward the jet bridge. As he passed 2A, the woman stood. "I'm sorry," she said. "I really didn't know." Behind him, Evan called out, "Mr. Reed." Marcus turned. Evan held up his phone. Down the times. Daniel closed his eyes for half a second. Marcus stepped onto the jet bridge, leaving his first-class seat behind. The aircraft door remained open, and the departure clock kept running. The jet bridge felt hotter than the cabin. Marcus stood beside the service door while Officer Holland spoke with the gate supervisor several yards away. Through the narrow windows, he could see baggage carts moving beneath the wing and a tug idling near the nose gear. Flight 4A2 should already have been sealed for pushback. Instead, every minute added another entry to the station delay report. His phone vibrated twice. The first message came from North Star Meridian's Operations Center. Preservation request acknowledged. The second came from Lena Foster, the airline's general counsel. Your audit profile triggered a restricted access alert. Are you safe? Sure. Marcus stared at the message longer than he should have. Lena was one of 4 people who knew he sometimes traveled under ordinary passenger profiles to observe operations without advance notice. She also knew why he hated using his position during disputes. 3 years earlier, after his younger brother had been removed from a hotel lobby while waiting for Marcus, every apology afterward had focused on Marcus's title, rather than on why his brother had been presumed not to belong there. He had promised himself he would never accept that kind of correction as justice. He typed back, "Safe, do not identify me yet. Preserve first." Then, against better judgment, he added, "No calls to station management. That may limit our ability to stop further record changes." Marcus knew she was right. His decision protected the integrity of the test, but it also allowed a bad situation to continue longer. Officer Holland returned. "They're saying your employee credentials created confusion," she said. "I didn't present employee credentials. They say you accessed a restricted function during a passenger dispute. I used a preservation control attached to my profile." Same question from my side. "Were you authorized?" "Yes." She studied him for a moment. "You keep answering just enough." Marcus looked toward the aircraft door. "I'm trying not to make my job title the reason anyone suddenly follows policy." Holland's expression softened, but only slightly. "That principle is going to get expensive if they decide you interfered with operations. I know." Gate supervisor emerged from the aircraft carrying a printed incident form. Her name badge read Cara Vance. She was younger than Daniel, maybe mid-30s, with the exhausted expression of someone who had inherited a problem during the worst 15 minutes of a shift. "Mr. Reed," she said, "we need your employee identification number." "You can verify my authority through the preservation request. That doesn't answer the form." Marcus gave her the number. Cara entered it into her handheld scanner. The device froze. She tried again. Then she stopped. Marcus watched her face change. Not recognition exactly. More like the realization that she had reached a part of the system she was not permitted to enter. "Yet does it show?" Holland asked. Cara turned the screen against her vest. "Extracted personnel record." Daniel appeared behind her. "Which proves the access issue," he said. Marcus looked at him. "No, it proves you don't have permission to view the record." Daniel ignored that. "We're documenting this as employee interference with station operations." Cara glanced sideways at him. "Daniel, the record is locked above our level. Then compliance can sort it out later." Marcus felt the edge of anger return. He had expected pressure. He had not expected Daniel to keep building the accusation after discovering information that should have slowed him down. "Who changed 2A?" Marcus asked. Daniel's mouth tightened. "It's under review." "So you checked?" No answer. Cara looked at the floor. That was enough. Marcus turned to her. "You know who made the override." Cara swallowed. "I know the agent code," Daniel cut in. "Do not discuss internal personnel information with him." Officer Holland stepped between them slightly. "Is the agent code his?" Daniel looked at her. "This is airline business." "It became my business when you requested a removal." Silence held for a few seconds. Cara finally said, The override was entered under a shared supervisor credential. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Shared credentials were prohibited. No, not discouraged, prohibited. They destroyed accountability because multiple people could act under one identity. "How many people know the password?" he asked. Daniel answered before Kara could. "That's not relevant to your seat." Marcus almost snapped back. Instead, he looked through the window at the aircraft. There were 187 passengers aboard, cabin crew approaching duty limits later that afternoon, connections waiting downstream, maintenance windows scheduled around those aircraft movements. If this practice existed beyond one gate, the risk was larger than 2A. His phone buzzed again. "Lena, we found 3 additional active flights with transactions under the same shared credential today. One involves a load control exception. I strongly recommend an operational hold while authenticated users are verified." Marcus read the message twice. A seat override was one thing. Load control touched aircraft weight and balance data. He had wanted proof before using authority. Now he had enough to require verification. Marcus typed one sentence back. "Initiate a narrow safety hold on affected departures only. No network-wide action yet." He pressed send. Beyond the glass, the tug beneath Flight 482 shut down. The shutdown of the tug changed the mood at the gate before anyone announced why. Kara looked through the window, then down at her handheld. Flight 482 just went into operational hold. Daniel turned toward Marcus. "You did that." Marcus shook his head. "I requested verification on flights tied to a shared supervisor credential. Operations decides what has to stop while they verify." "That's semantics. No, it's authority." Officer Holland watched both men, her posture unchanged. "How many flights?" 4 currently affected," Marcus said. Daniel gave a short laugh without humor. "Over a seat." Marcus felt the accusation hit exactly where Daniel meant it to. 4 flights, hundreds of passengers, crews already under time pressure. If the hold proved unnecessary, Marcus would own part of that cost. "Not over a seat," he said. "Over transactions entered under credentials nobody can reliably attribute." Kara's handheld chimed again. She read the screen and went still. "What?" Daniel asked. She did not answer him immediately. Operations wants all station supervisors to log out and re-authenticate with individual credentials. They're suspending the shared account. And Daniel stepped closer. "That account has been used for years. That doesn't make it allowed." Kara's voice had changed. The fatigue was still there, but something else had joined it, an awareness that whatever habit the station had normalized was now visible outside the station. Marcus' phone rang. "Lena." He answered this time. "Tell me what you have." Her voice came through clipped and controlled. "Hey. The first 3 transactions under the shared credential are cabin and customer service overrides. The 4th is different. A load control exception was acknowledged from the same account, but the actual weight and balance calculation was completed correctly by dispatch under a separate authenticated user." Marcus exhaled. "So no evidence of an unsafe aircraft." "Correct. We have evidence of broken credential discipline, not a falsified load sheet." That distinction mattered. Marcus looked at Daniel. The safety-critical calculation itself was authenticated properly. Daniel seized on it. "Then you stopped flights for nothing." Marcus ignored the bait. Lena continued. "There's more. The audit log shows 2A was reassigned after a station note labeled Mr. Reed as possible employee non-rev misclassification. The notation was entered 2 minutes before the seat override." Marcus frowned. He had been traveling on a fully paid confirmed ticket. "Who entered the note? We can't attribute it yet because of the shared credential." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. The damaged accountability chain was now proving its own danger. They knew what had happened. Could not yet prove who had done it. "What triggered the misclassification?" "We're checking." Marcus glanced at Kara. "Was there a standby list this morning?" "Yes." "Was 2A ever released to standby inventory?" Kara opened the station application and searched. "No." "Then someone treated a confirmed passenger as removable without the inventory system authorizing it." Daniel folded his arms. "Or someone saw an internal profile they didn't recognize and made an operational judgment." Marcus looked at him. There it was, finally, a surface explanation that sounded almost reasonable. An unfamiliar profile. An equipment change. A hurried boarding process. A supervisor trying to keep the cabin full and the aircraft moving. Except the process had required someone to ignore Marcus's confirmed ticket, create a false service note, move another passenger into his seat, and then characterize his objection as misconduct. One shortcut had needed several more to protect it. Officer Holland seemed to arrive at the same conclusion. If it was just an operational judgment, she said, why was his behavior report created before anyone verified the seat history? Daniel did not answer. Kara scrolled deeper into the log. I have something. Dummy. Everyone looked at her. The woman in 2A was originally in 6C. She has high-tier status. There's a customer retention note attached to her record from yesterday. Marcus felt the shape of the decision begin to emerge. Complaint history. Kara nodded. She threatened to move a corporate travel account after a service problem last month. Daniel's face hardened. That information is confidential. Marcus understood now. Not all of it, but enough. A station employee had seen a wealthy, high-status customer. A confirmed first-class seat occupied by a black man traveling without visible executive treatment and a schedule under pressure. Someone had decided which passenger was easier to displace. The bias had not acted alone. It had found an incentive. Lena spoke through the phone. Marcus, I also need you to know your identity is no longer containable. The executive governance flag has escalated to corporate operations. They're requesting direct confirmation. Marcus looked through the glass at Flight 482. Passengers were still seated inside. The woman in 2A had no idea whose seat she occupied. Evan was probably wondering whether his connection was disappearing by the minute. Marcus had spent the morning refusing to let his title become the proof that he deserved fair treatment. Now keeping it hidden was beginning to interfere with the investigation. He made the decision reluctantly. Verify me, he told Lena. But no station-wide announcement. Pause. Understood. Kara's handheld vibrated almost immediately. She looked at the message, then at Marcus. Her face lost what little color it had. Daniel noticed. What is it? Kara swallowed. Corporate governance confirmed his authority. Daniel looked from her to Marcus. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket. I'm Marcus Reed, he said, Chief Executive of North Star Meridian Air. Nobody spoke. Marcus did not enjoy the silence. He looked at Daniel and added the part that mattered more. And I was entitled to 2A before you knew my name. The reveal did not solve the problem. It made everyone more careful about how they spoke. Daniel stepped back first. His face settled into a guarded expression Marcus had seen in executive reviews when someone realized the next sentence might be quoted later. Mr. Reed, I wasn't aware. Marcus looked at him. That's the problem. Kara kept her handheld lowered now. Officer Holland remained beside the jet bridge entrance, watching the shift in posture more than the words. Daniel tried again. If I'd known your position, obviously this would have been handled differently. Marcus felt something close to anger then, sharper than anything he had shown all morning. My position had nothing to do with whether my ticket was valid. Daniel opened his mouth. Marcus raised one hand. No, you're past that. Through the glass, Flight 482 sat motionless. The passengers were still aboard. One of 4 affected departures had already missed its original pushback window. Marcus knew every delay would ripple outward, but he also knew that restarting operations before the credential problem was isolated would turn caution into theater. His phone rang again. Lena. He answered on speaker this time. We've completed the first authentication sweep, she said. 2 of the 4 flights are clear to depart. They're shared account transactions, were customer service entries only, and all safety-critical records have independent authenticated users. Marcus looked at Kara. Release those 2. Daniel frowned. You can do that? No. Marcus said. Operations can. I'm approving the governance side of the review. That distinction mattered, especially now. Lena continued. Flight 482 remains held because of the passenger record manipulation. The 4th flight has a separate issue. Not an unsafe aircraft, but a gate document was acknowledged under the shared account instead of the assigned supervisor's credentials. Compliance wants a manual verification before departure. How long? 15 to 20 minutes. Marcus nodded. Do it. Daniel looked toward the aircraft. Passengers are going to miss connections. You're grounding planes because someone used a shared login. Marcus turned toward him. I'm holding specific departures until we can establish who performed transactions they were required to perform under individual credentials. Daniel shook his head. That's not how stations work in the real world. Kara looked at him then. Yes, it is supposed to be. The words came out quietly, but Daniel heard them. Kara shifted her weight and looked toward Marcus. We've been sharing that supervisor account on morning turns for about 8 months. Marcus said nothing. She kept going. The biometric sign-in fails on 2 of the older handhelds. IT tickets were opened. He started using one credential because it was faster than logging in and out every time someone needed an override. Daniel cut in. Everybody knew about it. Not everybody, Kara said. Marcus watched her closely. She was frightened now, not of him exactly, but of having said something that could alter her career. Who approved the workaround, he asked. Kara hesitated. Daniel answered. It was no formal approval, it evolved. That phrase was almost elegant in its uselessness. Marcus had heard versions of it his entire career. A bad practice had evolved. A safeguard had gradually disappeared. Nobody had decided anything, which somehow meant nobody was responsible. Lena broke the silence. We found the original IT tickets. Marcus straightened. And closed as resolved 6 months ago. Kara stared at the phone. They weren't resolved. Someone marked them resolved. Daniel looked away. That was the deeper problem Marcus had feared. The shared credential had not appeared because frontline employees woke up one morning and decided controls were inconvenient. Something had failed, been reported, and then been administratively erased. Marcus looked at Kara. Then who closed the tickets? I don't know, Lena answered. Regional station support. We're pulling the names now. Marcus walked toward the terminal side of the gate. His legs needed movement. Sitting in a conference room would have made the situation feel cleaner than it was. A cluster of passengers had gathered near the windows. Some were irritated. Others were simply confused. On the aircraft, catering carts were being reopened because departure was no longer imminent. Marcus noticed Evan standing just inside the jet bridge doorway. Officer Holland had apparently allowed him off to speak with an agent about his connection. You okay? Marcus asked. Evan gave a tired shrug. I'm probably missing Denver. I'm sorry. Evan looked surprised. Didn't change my seat. No, but this is costing you time. Evan leaned against the wall. I wrote down the timestamps like you said. Marcus nodded. Keep them. Don't send them to anyone yet. You want them? Compliance may. But I want them to ask you properly. Evan studied him for a second, then smiled faintly. You really are the CEO. Unfortunately, yes. It was the first laugh Marcus had managed all morning. Then Lena spoke again. Have the 4th flight verification. Marcus turned back toward the phone. Go ahead. The aircraft is safe to operate. But we identified 14 station transactions this week under the shared credential that involve passenger removals, cabin downgrades, or discretionary reseating. Marcus stopped walking. 14. Not proof of discrimination, not proof that every decision was wrong, but enough to require review. Reserve all 14, he said. Lena paused. Already done. Marcus looked through the glass at Flight 4A2. What had happened to him might still have been one employee making one biased choice. Or it might have been a system that had made those choices easy to hide. He no longer intended to guess. Release every aircraft that passes safety and document verification, Marcus said. Keep the station's discretionary override authority suspended until individual credentials are restored. Daniel stared at him. He could cripple boarding. Then we fix the tools. For the first time that morning, Marcus was not fighting for 2A. He was trying to find out how many other seats had been taken the same way. By noon, the gate area had become a working investigation instead of a delay. North Star Meridian's compliance team had set up in an unused customer service office beside the concourse. Not because Marcus wanted a dramatic executive meeting, but because the station needed somewhere to verify transactions without disrupting every departure still moving through the terminal. Kara sat at one workstation with an individual login restored. Lena joined by secure video. Officer Holland remained nearby because her removal report had now become part of the evidence chain. Daniel stood across the room with a regional operations manager named Grant Ellis. Grant had arrived 10 minutes earlier, carrying the careful confidence of someone who had already been briefed by legal. We should separate the credential issue from the customer incident, he said. Shared access is a controls failure. The seat reassignment may still have been legitimate. Marcus leaned against the edge of the desk. Good, then verify it. Kara opened the first transaction. The record showed Marcus's confirmed seat in 2A, the aircraft change, and the woman's original assignment in 6C. Then came the note labeling Marcus as a possible non-revenue employee traveler. Lena spoke from the screen. That classification is unsupported. His ticket was purchased through the public booking system. No employee travel code appears anywhere in the reservation. Grant nodded slowly. Could have been a visual assumption based on the restricted profile. Marcus looked at him. Explain that. Grant hesitated. Staff sometimes see internal markers they don't recognize. They make a judgment based on available information. Available information included a paid ticket. Daniel shifted beside him, and an unusual profile. Kara clicked into the access log. The shared supervisor credential had opened Marcus's reservation twice before the note was added. The first access lasted 11 seconds. The second lasted nearly a minute. Then the misclassification appeared. Kara zoomed in on the sequence. There was enough time to open fair details, she said. Grant glanced at Daniel. Does that prove whoever accessed it actually viewed them? No, Marcus said. It proves they could have. Keep going. That was the distinction he wanted the review to preserve. The log did not read minds. It showed opportunities, actions, and timing. Kara opened the supporting transactions from the same week. 14 discretionary passenger actions. Some were routine. A family had been reseated together after an equipment swap. One traveler had voluntarily accepted a downgrade for compensation. Another had been moved because a seat was inoperative. Then they reached a removal from 2 days earlier. A black nurse traveling home after a night shift had been moved from premium economy to a middle seat in the rear cabin after a high-status passenger requested her seat. The record included a note. Passenger appeared flexible. Marcus stared at the phrase. What does that mean operationally? Kara shook her head. Nothing. That isn't a defined category. The next case involved an older black couple separated from adjacent seats they had paid to select. Another high-tier passenger received the pair. The note read, "Low likelihood of escalation." Grant straightened. "Those notes are inappropriate, but we still need to determine who entered them." Lena answered, "We do. But we can determine something else first." She displayed a comparison set. 28 discretionary reseating actions from the station over the previous month, half performed through individual credentials, half through the shared account. The individually authenticated changes mostly contained standard reason codes: equipment substitution, broken seat, accessibility need, family seating, voluntary accommodation. The shared account entries were different. 9 involved vague notes about passenger flexibility, cooperation, presentation, or likelihood of complaint. 7 of those 9 affected black passengers. Nobody in the room spoke for several seconds. Marcus disliked the number because he knew exactly what it was and what it was not. A pattern requiring investigation, not a verdict. "Sample size is small," Grant said. "Yes," Marcus replied. "May be legitimate explanations." "Yes." Grant seemed satisfied by the agreement. Marcus pushed away from the desk. "So we don't announce discrimination as a proven finding. Preserve the records, interview the affected passengers, authenticate who used the account, and compare the decisions against policy." Daniel folded his arms. "And until then, nobody gets punished because I'm angry." Kara looked at him. He continued, "But nobody gets to erase this as a misunderstanding either." Officer Holland slid her written report onto the desk. "My observation is ready, mister. It was calm when I arrived. I did not observe threats, abusive language, or physical obstruction. The request for removal was based on the airline's representation that he was non-compliant." Daniel looked at her. "You were there for the end." "Correct. That's why I wrote what I saw, not what I didn't." Lena asked Kara to open Daniel's individual authentication history. Daniel's posture changed. His personal account had not been used that morning until after Marcus was removed from the aircraft. Grant looked at him. "Why?" Daniel rubbed his forehead. "The handheld near the jet bridge wouldn't accept my biometric login." "So whose shared credential did you use?" Daniel did not answer. Kara's eyes dropped to the desk. Marcus saw it. Kara swallowed. A password was taped inside the supervisor cabinet. Grant closed his eyes. Marcus felt no satisfaction. A broken device, a password on paper, used IT tickets, pressure to protect valuable customers, vague discretion, records that could not be attributed. The system had not created bias by itself. It had simply made biased decisions easier to execute and harder to trace. Lena spoke again. "We've identified the employee who added the note to Mr. Reed's record." Everyone turned toward the screen. It was not Daniel. Daniel exhaled. Marcus did not. Who was it? The customer service supervisor working the podium before Kara took over. She used the shared login, but a workstation camera and badge access timestamp place her at the terminal. Grant looked toward the door. "Where is she?" "Still on shift," Kara said. Marcus glanced at Daniel. "You had a chance to verify before turning her decision into a conduct case." Daniel looked at the floor. That was his part, not stealing the seat, choosing to protect the story that justified it. Marcus looked at Grant. "Remove Daniel from operational duty pending review. Same for the supervisor who entered the note. Paid status until interviews are complete. No public conclusions yet." Grant nodded. "And the station? Individual authentication only. Restore the broken devices. Audit the discretionary reseating cases. Contact every affected passenger without asking them to prove why they deserve the seats they purchased." Lena added, "Independent reviewer?" Marcus nodded. "Yes." He looked through the office window toward the gate. 482 had been cleared nearly 40 minutes earlier, but Marcus had not boarded. His seat had finally been restored. For the first time that day, 2A was waiting for him. Marcus did not return to 2A. By the time Flight 482 was cleared, operations had already protected the passengers who still had workable connections and rebooked those who did not. Evan had been moved to a Denver flight 90 minutes later. The woman who had been placed in Marcus's seat had asked to return to 6C before departure, though Kara told her she was not required to. Marcus watched the aircraft push back from the window instead. Lena stood beside him now, having arrived from headquarters with 2 compliance attorneys and an information security manager. She brought him coffee that had gone cold while they worked through the first round of decisions. "People are going to say you grounded the airline because somebody took your seat," she said. Marcus looked out at the taxiway. "I didn't ground the airline. I know. But that will be the version people like." 4 aircraft had been held during the credential review. 3 were released within 25 minutes. Flight 482 took longer because the passenger removal record required separate verification. No aircraft outside the affected group had been stopped. The operational cost was real anyway. Connections had been missed. Crews had lost schedule margin. One flight had needed a replacement first officer after the delay pushed his duty period too close to the limit. Marcus rubbed a hand across his face. "This is the part nobody puts in the victory story." Lena handed him a printed summary. North Star Meridian's Incident Command Team had approved an immediate temporary policy. Discretionary cabin overrides at the station now required individually authenticated supervisor credentials and a second authorization when a confirmed passenger was involuntarily downgraded for service recovery involving another customer. Broken handhelds would be replaced that afternoon. Every unresolved authentication ticket across the network was being reopened for review. Marcus read the page twice. Network-wide review? Of the equipment failures, yes. Not of every seating decision. Good. He did not want one station's misconduct turned into an excuse for performative panic across 38 airports. Down the concourse, Daniel walked out of the customer service office carrying his work bag. Grant accompanied him. Daniel had been removed from operational duty, not fired. The supervisor who entered Marcus's false classification had received the same status pending interviews and review. Daniel stopped when he saw Marcus. For a moment, Marcus considered walking away. Instead, he waited. "I didn't write the note," Daniel said. "I know, I didn't move your seat. I know that too." Daniel looked frustrated by the answers. "So why am I off duty?" Ebers folded the summary. "Because Officer Holland asked why I was being removed and you gave her a conduct story you hadn't verified." Daniel stared at him. "I was trying to get the flight out. That explains the pressure. It doesn't erase the decision." Daniel looked through the window toward the empty gate. "You have any idea what happens when we miss departure targets?" "We get calls. Reports. Every delay gets questioned." "Yes, and you built those targets." The accusation landed harder than Marcus expected. He did not answer immediately. Daniel was not wrong. Marcus had approved performance incentives that rewarded departure reliability. They were not supposed to override passenger rights or authentication rules, but systems did not experience policies separately. Employees experienced all of them at once. "I helped build the pressure," Marcus said. Daniel seemed almost disappointed that Marcus admitted it. "That doesn't mean you get to falsify a passenger's behavior to absorb it. I didn't falsify anything." You described refusal to surrender a valid seat as non-compliance before checking why the seat had been reassigned. Daniel looked away. Marcus let the silence remain. Grant approached from behind him. Corporate communications wants your approval. They're proposing a statement saying a technology failure caused irregular seat assignments. Marcus turned. No. Grant blinked. There was a technology failure. There was also human judgment. We don't have final findings. Didn't say that. Grant lowered his voice. Publicly admitting we're investigating possible biased discretionary decisions is going to create exposure. Marcus looked at him. Calling it a technology problem when people made choices creates different exposure. Lena gave the smallest nod. Grant exhaled. What do you want released? Marcus handed him the summary. State what we know. Shared credentials violated policy. 4 departures were temporarily held while records were authenticated. No unsafe aircraft was identified. 2 employees are off operational duty pending review. The affected reseating cases are being independently examined. And your seat? Marcus looked toward the runway, where Flight 482 had already joined the departure queue. Leave my title out of the reason the policy was wrong. That afternoon, the first replacement handheld arrived at the gate still sealed in its shipping box. Kara cut the tape herself. The independent review began before the first news story did. By the next morning, North Star Meridian had assigned an outside employment law firm and a retired airline compliance director to examine the 14 discretionary transactions connected to the shared credential. Marcus stayed out of the interviews. Lena insisted on that boundary, and he agreed even though part of him wanted every answer immediately. He spent the morning somewhere less dramatic, at the operations floor, reviewing the departure metrics he had helped design. The dashboard still showed red beside Flight 482. 47 minutes. Marcus stared at the number until Lena set a folder beside his keyboard. You cannot interrogate a delay metric into confessing, she said. He almost smiled. What do you have? Preliminary findings. Enough for corrective action, not final discipline. Marcus opened the folder. Of the 14 transactions, 6 were fully supported by policy. 3 involved poor documentation but no identifiable passenger harm. 5 required deeper review because confirmed passengers had been displaced for higher status customers without proper consent or compensation procedures. 4 of those 5 passengers were black. The reviewer had included the sentence Marcus cared about most. The current sample supports concern about disparate discretionary treatment but is insufficient by itself to establish the motive of each employee involved. Marcus read it twice. That stays exactly as written. Lena nodded. Agreed. The woman who had entered the false note on Marcus's reservation had admitted what she had done. Her name was Rebecca Shaw. She told investigators she had assumed Marcus was traveling on an internal executive standby profile because his reservation displayed a restricted governance marker she did not recognize. She also admitted something harder. When the high-status passenger complained at the podium, Rebecca had looked at Marcus from across the gate and decided he was less likely to create a problem. Not because of anything he had said. He had not spoken to her yet. The interviewer asked what made her think that. Rebecca had struggled for an answer. Finally, she said she had read him as someone traveling alone who would probably cooperate. Just closed the folder. The language was careful. The decision had not been. What happens to her? Final discipline is HR's decision, Lena said. Recommendation is termination for falsifying the passenger classification and bypassing the downgrade process. And Daniel? Suspension, final warning, mandatory retraining, removal from supervisory qualification for 6 months. The reviewer found he didn't create the original problem, but he escalated an unverified account and mischaracterized the removal basis. Marcus leaned back. It was less satisfying than firing everyone. That was one reason he trusted it. And Kara? No discipline. She violated the credential rule too, but she had documented unresolved device failures and raised concerns twice. Her manager told the team to keep the line moving while IT tickets showed as closed. Marcus looked up. Manager? Regional station support, the same layer that had closed the unresolved tickets. Still, that review was still open. Marcus rubbed his thumb along the paper edge. And the passengers? Restitution offers go out today. Refund of the affected seat fees, additional travel credit, written explanation, and an option to speak with the independent reviewer. Waiver requirement. Good, Lena studied him. You still look unhappy. I am. Get the policy change. That isn't repair. By afternoon, Marcus returned to the airport. Not for cameras. There were none waiting. He met Kara at the same gate where the dispute had started. Two replacement handhelds sat charging behind the podium. Every supervisor now used individual authentication, and the software blocked discretionary involuntary downgrades unless a reason code and second authorization were entered. Kara tapped one screen. It's slower. Yeah. Marcus looked at her. Sheila, I'm serious. Maybe 12 seconds slower. Can you survive? You're forming a support group. That small joke did more for him than any corporate statement had. Then she grew serious. I should have said something earlier about the shared login. You did file tickets. And after that, Marcus looked at the gate area. Passengers moved past them with coffees, neck pillows, children, half-zip backpacks, ordinary travel. The kind that depended on hundreds of invisible decisions being made correctly. It stopped you. Kara thought about it. I didn't want to be the person who made every morning harder. Marcus nodded. That's how bad workarounds become culture. She looked at him. I'm sorry, he did not tell her everything was fine. It's better if you help fix it. I will. The boarding chime sounded. Marcus glanced toward row 2 on the seat map displayed behind the counter. 2A was occupied by a passenger whose name meant nothing to him, exactly as it should. His phone buzzed with a message from Lena. The board had approved a 90-day review of incentive structures that rewarded departure performance without separately measuring improper involuntary reseating and complaint reversals. Marcus read the sentence twice. That was his part of the repair. Not just what frontline employees had done under pressure, the pressure itself. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and watched Kara authenticate the next override with her own fingerprint. This time, the system recorded exactly who was making the decision. 90 days later, Marcus returned to the same airport without telling the station he was coming. This time, he was not testing a seat assignment. The board had asked for a final report on the corrective plan, and he wanted to see whether the new rules had survived contact with ordinary work. At the gate, the morning turn was already underway. Kara stood behind the podium with 2 agents, calling boarding groups while a replacement handheld flashed green against her palm. The investigation had closed the week before. Rebecca Shaw was terminated for falsifying Marcus's passenger classification, bypassing required downgrade procedures, and entering an unsupported service note. Daniel returned to duty after suspension, retraining, and 6 months without supervisory authority. His reinstatement required a new qualification review and documented coaching on removal decisions. The regional support manager, who had closed unresolved authentication tickets, received a final warning and lost responsibility for station technology compliance. None of those outcomes had arrived in a single afternoon. That mattered to Marcus. The independent review ultimately examined 43 discretionary reseating actions across the station. 8 required restitution because confirmed passengers had been displaced without proper consent, compensation, or documented policy basis. 5 of those 8 passengers were black. The reviewers found a pattern of inconsistent discretion with disparate impact, though they stopped short of claiming a single motive behind every case. North Star Meridian accepted the finding publicly. The airline reimbursed affected passengers at travel credits without requiring confidentiality and created an appeal channel for involuntary cabin downgrades. Every station now tracked improper reseating reversals separately from on-time performance. Shared supervisor credentials had been eliminated across the network, and unresolved authentication failures automatically escalated after 24 hours, instead of disappearing inside local ticket queues. Marcus had changed something too. The board approved a revised incentive scorecard after he argued that rewarding departure speed without measuring bad passenger decisions created exactly the wrong kind of efficiency. His own compensation metrics now included verified complaint reversals and policy compliance failures. Lena had laughed when she showed him the amended scorecard. You managed to put yourself on the corrective action list. I helped build the old one. That was not an invitation. He signed it anyway. At the gate, Kara spotted him and lifted one eyebrow. No executive alert this time, trying something new, buying a ticket and behaving. That'll never scale. Marcus smiled. A passenger approached the podium holding a boarding pass for 3A. Her seat had been changed after an aircraft substitution, and another traveler had already been assigned there. Marcus watched Kara handle it. She scanned both reservations. Then she explained the conflict to both passengers before touching the seat map. No assumptions, no vague note, no attempt to decide which person would be easier to move. The process took nearly a minute longer than the old shortcut might have. Nobody missed departure. Marcus boarded last. His seat was 4C. He had chosen it himself. As he stowed his backpack, Evan Brooks appeared in the aisle 3 rows ahead. Marcus recognized him before Evan did. "You've got to be kidding me," Evan said. Marcus laughed. "Denver again?" "Different job interview this time. Good luck." Evan tapped the side pocket of his bag. "I still have those timestamps. You can delete them now." Evan considered that. Then he shook his head. "Keeping them. Educational value." Marcus settled into 4C. Before the door closed, his phone vibrated. A message from Lena, one of the passengers from the restitution review, asked to meet. Not about her old seat. She says the new appeal process exposed a separate accessibility problem at another station. Different policy, different team. She wants to know who will look at it. Marcus read the message once. The case that had started in 2A was finished. The records were closed. The people responsible had been reviewed. The passengers had been compensated. The controls had changed. This was not the same dispute. He typed back. Send it to accessibility compliance first. Copy me after intake. Then he switched his phone to airplane mode. Outside the window, a ramp agent removed the final cone from beneath the wing. The aircraft pushed back on schedule.